You are listening to INTERFORM Podcast with Ro on the radio. You're going to want to hear this.
Welcome to INTERFORM Podcast. On this episode, I have with me special guest Anna Hamaker. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
She has like the coolest name. To me, that's like a secret agent name. Anna Hamaker, tell us a little bit about where you're from. What organization are you representing?
Yeah, so I'm representing the Northwest Arkansas Center for Sexual Assault. We're located in Springdale off of Sunset. I am the education and prevention specialist. So doing, presentations, outreach, talking to people and groups in the community is most of what I do.
Well, that's good. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I want to kind of dive into, so why next month is April. So why is April designated as the month for sexual assault awareness?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really when we talk about why did this month become designated, for this social cause, going back to the foundations that were laid for decades by organizers and activists and things like that. So really, it was in the 1970s that we see this push for talking about sexual assault, kind of bringing it into the light, prevention and awareness, becoming more of a topic. And so it was 1971 that the first rape crisis center was established. And then 5 years after that, there were over 400 centers across the country, and statewide coalitions began to form. We have one in Arkansas, that's Arkansas Coalition Against Sexual Assault. So then going into the 80s, the National Coalition Against Sexual Assault became a unified group. And actually they polled other state coalitions against sexual assault to find out what was the date they wanted to kind of, rally around as a week or a month dedicated to sexual assault awareness. And they chose April, and they chose the teal ribbon as a symbol of supporting survivors of sexual assault. And yeah, so a lot kind of led up to that. And even after that, it wasn't until 1993 that the Violence Against Women Act was passed, which included making marital rape illegal and things like that, requiring law enforcement to treat gender-based violence as a crime rather than a private family matter. And so that's kind of when I think of the quote, the personal is political, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. For so long, sexual violence was treated as this private thing that happens in your home with your husband, or this personal thing that's shameful and taboo. But because of women's subjugation, in our society, it was legally sanctioned that you could be sexually assaulted by your husband because you're seen as, his property. You're just an object. And so after that, officially, Sexual Assault Awareness Month was observed for the first time in 2001. And then in
That's
2000,
so late.
I know.
Yeah.
In 2009, Barack Obama declared April the official month for sexual assault awareness. So really, it's been a long time coming, and there's still a ton of work to do. But even officially, it wasn't a recognized event until 2009, which is
that is
really
13
crazy.
Years ago. That is
yeah, the
wow.
math. I'm glad you were quick with that.
The only reason I'm quick with the math because my son was born in 2009. But man, when you said the 70s, that to me is still late. And then once you said 2000 and then 2009, it just seems like, it took a while. You did say it's a long time coming. Why do you feel as though it's still a taboo topic, even today in 2023?
Yeah, I do. I think sex in general can be kind of taboo, especially in our area.
Absolutely.
But I think it's really taboo because of how common it is. Bringing up, there are a lot of clients who come to us and they didn't even realize at the time that they were assaulted because, oh, am I allowed to feel this way? Am I being dramatic? Blaming themselves. There's so much shame and self-blame and guilt that comes with it. And a lot of times women aren't believed and they're not taken seriously. And sexual violence is one of the least reported crimes because survivors are afraid they won't be treated fairly by the legal system. They won't be believed. They'll be shamed by, their friends or family or, their boss if it's in the workplace or something like that. So I think it is taboo. And I try, to be connected like at the U of A campus and things like that, just to, provide a space where people can talk about it and share and, kind of find community in that. And so together we can kind of lift our voices up collectively.
Absolutely. I want to say that the fear is definitely valid because I have seen how not all law enforcement, not all people, but some law enforcement, how they do treat victims of sexual assault is not necessarily a very kind way. And so I think it's important to realize and to understand that there is a reason why women or people in general, because sexual assault does not just happen to women,
100%.
that people are afraid to come forward because of how other people have been treated previously. Where does Arkansas rank in cases of reported sexual assault? Because there's a difference. Like you said, this is something that is the least reported because people don't feel like they're going to be believed. So where does Arkansas rank when it comes to the reports?
So it's not a good ranking, as you may guess. For child sexual abuse, we're number 1 in the country. I wasn't expecting you to say number 1. Yep. And then adult sexual assault, we're number 2, right behind Alaska, which was kind of surprising. Yeah.
Alaska's huge. Like, oh, that is so frustrating.
I know.
Why is that? Why do you feel like we are terrible with those particular numbers?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I wish I could point to one specific reason.
Yeah.
I think, it has a lot to do with being rural and higher levels of poverty. There's not as many services. I think also, being in the Bible Belt, there's kind of a purity culture. There isn't sexual education really. So how do you learn about protection or consent and things like that? Most people do, when they're adult or when it's, something had already happened, and some people still don't. But yeah, I guess that's where my mind goes. There's probably a lot of other factors, but
those are pretty good factors. What would you say, because they don't teach sex education in schools, right? Unless is there still a thing? Because when I was younger, I mean, this is a long time ago, but when I was younger, you brought home a permission slip to your parents and they can say yes or no, I do want my child to, learn about sex education, or I don't. Is that the case here? Or is it just like a no, not at all? There's no permission slip thing. I'm not really sure.
To my knowledge, there isn't. I remember learning a little bit about it in PE and, having the period talk, but nothing else about sexual intercourse or activity, bodies, bodily functions, relationships, nothing like that.
I didn't learn about that until probably college. When it comes to protection and methods of birth control, it was just something that my school or my parents did not discuss. I mean, I grew up in Tennessee, so that's still technically, the Bible Belt. So I think that has a lot to do with it. So where do you feel the biggest need is? Would it be resources, or would it be education, or would it be a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. When we talk about prevention, it exists at multiple levels. So on a pre-prevention level, talking to parents about how they talk to their kids about their bodily autonomy and consent, and, using the, correct names for their anatomy and things like that, how they interact with others, teaching kids about respect, power differentials, gender inequality and things like that. And then on a more community organizational level, teaching bystander intervention, talking to groups, organizations, workplaces about how they can structure, their culture and policies to promote equality in the workplace. And on a societal level, laws, policies, legal system, even gendered socialization, what we teach, is normal for boys or, is supposed to be normal for girls. Like that all, kind of plays a role. I think education is really, really important. I've talked to so many people who said, I had no idea. Like, you're allowed to just say no, resources. A lot of people don't know that we're in the area and we've been there for, 40 years or something.
40 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Still, I think a lot goes into it. And when we talk about prevention, something we try to stay away from is kind of promoting the idea that sexual violence is a women's issue and it's the responsibility of women to protect themselves. So self-defense classes, pepper spray, and things like that, which not knocking at all. Like that can be a wonderful thing and feel really empowering. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a woman's responsibility to have to defend herself that way. And it kind of leads into victim blame. Like, oh, well, if I had
shouldn't have been wearing that.
Yeah, if I had taken a self-defense class, I could have fought him off or, things like that. Why didn't you carry pepper spray? You could have prevented it and that kind of thing. So really kind of zooming out from an individual's responsibility and looking at, factors in our, socialization, culture, and even like community locally that impact, these rates of violence.
Absolutely. I feel like there is a responsibility for parents to teach all kids of all genders. I personally have a son. And so I feel like it is my responsibility to teach him that certain things are not okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like when I was growing up, I have 3 brothers. I don't have any sisters. It was my responsibility not to put myself in that position. And so, and at times I felt like I had to basically be a psychic, right? I had to be a psychic and I had to have on 10 layers of clothes. I couldn't express myself and wear a dress or a skirt because if it were short, then that implied that I, was active or sexually active.
Right.
And so I think there needs to be a little bit of a shift, like a mind shift, and maybe like talking to kids in general of all genders that the basis of consent, right? And that just because like a dress doesn't mean a yes. I've heard that before. And I feel like we've gotten kind of away from that. It's always, like you said, it's always the woman or whatever gender's responsibility to prevent it from happening instead of having people be personally accountable for their actions. And I feel like that is it's part of the problem. It's part of the issue. I have a question about how can friends support a friend? Like, let's say my friend comes to me and he or she or they tell me that they have been sexually assaulted. I am not a professional. I don't work at NWACSA. So, what can I do to support them?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think there are a few things. So first, just letting you know that you believe them. Like no questions asked, no, well, what was going on? How much did you have to drink? None of those why questions.
Yes.
Because even though if you have good intentions, it can be kind of read as blaming. So just believing them. Yeah. Offering them resources, offering them, I've heard it described as they are now driving the bus and you can get on the bus and you, if they ask you to get off the bus, you get off the bus, but you're there to support them and help them get to where they need to go. So I also think respecting their decision, if they don't want to report, pressuring them to report is not going to be helpful. If they do want to report, trying to talk them out of it is also not helpful. So just anything you can do to make sure that they are in control of the situation now.
To make sure they're supported and that you're not there to tell them what to do.
Right.
Because
yeah.
I'll be honest with you, if one of my friends told me that they were assaulted, I would be first of all super angry, and I'd be like, "What's his name?" or her name, because anyone can assault someone. I feel like I would pressure them to report it. And hearing you say that, it definitely provides me with a different perspective, because I'm thinking that I'm helping them by like wanting to take charge and like wanting to be like, yes, this is what we need to do. Like, you need to report this. This person doesn't need to get away with it. Because I'm all about, they need to be held accountable. I don't want them to get away with it. They hurt my friend. But the way you are describing it, it definitely seems like that's better. It's better for the victim to feel supported than for you to just tell them what they're going to do. If they're not comfortable, then they're not comfortable.
Yeah, and just being there for them, checking in on them. Also not like asking them to like share the details with you, especially not right away,
Yes.
like, well, what happened? Tell me everything from start to finish. They might not remember. It could be fuzzy, like maybe she's not or he isn't ready, So I think exactly like you're saying, it's out of care, that we want to be like, well, come on, like we need to get justice for you. And absolutely. But, if one of your friends or family members comes to you, like in that moment, just supporting whatever it is they feel is the right next step.
That is some really good advice. I think another narrative that I think is harmful is that parents are teaching their kids stranger danger, right? Parents are teaching their kids, like, don't talk to strangers, don't take candy from strangers. Strangers are the bad guys, and strangers are people who are going to harm you. And from what I understand about sexual assault, it's mostly the people who assault kids or assault people in general are people that they know. They're not random people on the street. So how do we go about, as far as an education standpoint, like for parents or for people, that take care of young children, how do we get away from this whole stranger danger narrative? Not saying that strangers aren't dangerous.
Right.
They still dangerous to me. I'm a grown woman. But how do we get away from that?
Yeah. And I think that's a common misconception that you're bringing up, that a sexual assault is something that happens when someone jumps out of a bush in the dark and you're on a jog and, something like that. But you're right. The majority of sexual assaults are perpetrated by someone that person knows. And whether that's a friend, an acquaintance, a former or current partner, a family member, like it's, like you said, majority of times someone that person knows. And so I get what you're saying. They can be tricky. Like, I think first and foremost, creating a conversation, open space for conversation of, we don't keep secrets, secrets keep us sick kind of thing. Like if someone makes you uncomfortable, like if they touch you in a way that you don't like, if they talk to you in a way that you don't like, that's something you share with an adult. So no fear associated with telling, just being really open about, what we're comfortable with. Are you comfortable with giving, this person a hug if they're a member of your family? If not, there's probably a reason why, not saying every time, but you get what I mean.
Not every time, but like that's something that needs to be brought up as well. When you're a kid and you go to see your family for the holidays, give your grandmother a hug, give your grandmother a kiss. And sometimes you don't want to give your grandmother a kiss, not because they make you uncomfortable, but just because you don't want to. Because, my grandmother smelled like mothballs. But I think we need to empower kids a little bit more to make that decision whether or not they feel comfortable with sharing affection. Because what you're saying is, I don't care how you feel, the right thing to do is to give this adult affection or a hug.
Right.
And so they may take that as, no matter what kind of affection it is, then you have to do whatever this adult says. And I think that we should definitely like get away from that. As far as support goes, there are family situations where the child has made it apparent to the adult, the grown up, like, hey, I'm not comfortable around Uncle so-and-so because they, touched me inappropriately. And I want to know why there's this sense of protection for the uncle or for the family member that has violated the child. It's strange to me that, first of all, you wouldn't take that accusation seriously. And second, that your first instinct is to protect an adult and not a child. Why do you think there's certain familiar structures like that to where they just don't want to believe the child? It's just so like how do you support that? Like, how do you, because in NWACSA, you offer counseling services as well. Is that something that you help with as far as like how to handle the family aspect of it?
Yeah, so I will say our center is 18 and up, so it's only an adult center, but
Okay.
We do still see clients who, whether it happened as a child and they weren't believed, within their family, or, it happened as an adult and still, from their family, they're not believed or they're kicked out and things like that. I've seen that happen. It's hard to say. It does happen. It's really, really, really sad. But I think at a certain point, you have to put yourself first. And I think
There it is.
And it's different, for different cultures, how much
Sure.
we value, close-knit families, what stays within the family, what is talked about and what isn't, what's normalized and what's not.
I think that, so what you're saying is that the center supports, 18 and up. But what you're saying is the center basically supports people who need that type of counseling, not just for something that happened last week, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So it could have happened 10 years ago. It could have happened 5 years ago. You do provide support for people who just, who need to discuss that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, we have clients who it happened when they were children and they come to us and it's like, I never, dealt with it. I
Yeah.
never knew how. I never talked to anyone about it, but I'm
Yeah.
ready now. And we are so happy, to hold someone's hand kind of through that healing journey. But yeah, and I think also going back to like, just our culture in general, like especially being taught like family comes first. And as, and like if it was a woman that was sexually assaulted, like would this break up your family? Would this cause conflict in your family? If it's your husband, do you want that to affect your children and things like that? So I think, in a lot of family dynamics, like no matter the culture, there's a lot of guilt,
Yes.
that's kind of embedded in things like that. But absolutely, that is something that happens, and untangling all of that, confusion, the guilt, the anger, if no matter when it happened, is an important part of the healing process.
Absolutely. Now, this is such a heavy topic. Like, I want to, so there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Like, what is some of the good work that you do with NWACSA? What are some rewarding factors about what you do? What do you like about it? Because you don't have an easy job. Your job is not easy at all. But what makes you want to, continue and help people every single day? What are some highlights? Like, of course, don't, mention any names or anything.
Right.
But like when you help someone, like does that feeling, is that what propels you to keep moving forward?
100%. And I think for people that do, any kind of work like this, it really is motivated by deep love and care.
Right.
So I think for me, tapping into that, like I do this because, I care so much and no one should ever have to live in fear that they could be subjected to this kind of violence. And I am fighting to build a culture, a community where we can be free of that. And I think sometimes it's really easy to get discouraged, like,
Sure.
Especially with the legal system and things like that. And, stories on the news, like every other day about violence against women and things
Yes.
like that. But when you sit down and think about, like, I'm a licensed social worker, so I do see a few, like, counseling clients at the center as well.
Okay.
And even knowing you've been there for someone on probably the worst day of their life, like, that makes the difference. That if I was there for one person when they needed support, when they needed, somewhere to turn, a shoulder to cry on, like, that makes it worth it for me. And on days that it's really hard, I think about all the, women that have come through the group or counseling clients who've had breakthroughs. So there is light,
Right,
and
yeah.
considering, like, having gratitude for all the decades of activism and organizing that, have led up to this moment, helps me want to keep going because there's more to fight for, obviously, but change is happening. If it's not the speed that I want it, that's okay, but we'll get there.
Awesome. Well, Anna, thank you so much for joining us. Tell people how maybe they can reach out to you or how they can find out more information about NWACSA.
Yeah, so we have a website, nwacsa.org. You can find out all about our services, how to volunteer. We have events coming up, in the month of April and even beyond. So that would be wonderful. My email is anna@nwasexualassault.org. Yeah, we have a hotline number, 24 hours, anyone can call.
Good.
If you just want to talk, you have questions, you need resources, someone who was assaulted, you were assaulted, like anything, we're happy to help.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you for having me. I appreciate you using your platform to talk about Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. That was Anna. I'm Ro. You can find me on Instagram. It's RO_on_the radio, all one word. For more information, make sure you follow us on interform.art, or you can go to our website, interform.art. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
You are listening to INTERFORM Podcast with Ro on the radio. You're going to want to hear this.